Entering the space, I saw Amy on stage with us band, and then the awe that envelops when witnessing a genius. From her oddly dainty presence, that voice, a voice that seemed not to come from her, but from somewhere beyond even Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. From the font of all greatness, a voice that was filled with such power and pain that is once entirely human, yet laced with the divine. My ears, my mouth, my heart, and mind all instantly opened. Winehouse? Winehouse? Winehouse! That twerp, all eyeliner, and laggard dithering up Chalk Farm Road under a back-combed barnet, the lips that I'd only seen clinching a fishwife and dribbling curses, now a portal for this holy sound. So now I knew she wasn't some just hapless wannabe, yet another pissed-up nit who was never going to make it, nor was she even a ten-a-penny chanteuse enjoying her 15 minutes. She was a blanking genius. Shallow fool that I am now regarded her in a different light, the light that blazed down from the heaven when she sang. Pretty powerful, huh? And that's what it's like. I wanted to read that extensive letter there to give you the insight if you've never been in and amongst someone practicing an extreme addictive behavior. You get lost. You don't see what's really going on. And when you're practicing that behavior yourself, you don't see how magical you are. You lose touch with that. And the press lost touch with the magic of this woman's powerful voice. And they focused on her unraveling, on her addictions, on her radical behavior. Where it seems to be that often as society, we seem to want to see the breakdown of a person's life rather than the success and the achievements as a society. But what do we do when we're caught up in that midst? Because you see, Winehouse along the way, I'm sure, hurt many people. And I'm sure Russell Brand, in his practicing both drugs and alcohol addiction, harmed many. So that's where we bring ourselves to today, to look at making a list of all persons we have harmed and becoming willing to make amends to them all. From the 12 steps from the book, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, I read, Steps 8 and 9 are concerned with personal relations. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we may have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. This is a very large order. It is a task which we may perform with increasing skill, but never really finish. Learning how to live in the greatest peace, partnership, and brotherhood with all men and women of whatever description is a moving and fascinating adventure. And where I shared earlier about my family on this Sunday, my brother-in-law, who was my brother-in-law when I first met Crystal 5 years ago, has now become a transgenderist and is now my sister-in-law. And Danielle was first Daniel when I met him. And he's a lawyer in one of the largest law firms, not only in Vancouver, but in all of Canada. In and amongst 150 other lawyers, plus staff. Davis and Company. And last November, with this need to shift, to change permanently from being a man that was going to work during the day and coming home and changing into a woman at night, he wanted his life to be succinct, to be in alignment with how he felt on the inside. And for many of us, we could never understand that. Why would a man want to become a woman? We can't understand that because of where we are within our mind. And it's hard to put ourselves into another person's shoes and understand, how do you fight that urge that says, this is what feels right to me, but society says it's not right. And yet he finally gave into it and allowed it and surrendered to it, which was a perfect song this morning, and surrendered into that sense and that feeling. And so he began the process of informing this large law firm, starting with the partners, starting with his boss, that he was going to make this shift. And they gave him 3 weeks off. And much reflection was taking place on both parts. But he went as Danielle about 7-8 months ago, and was accepted in completeness. That takes courage. That takes courage. But the family, small town, doctor in the town for 35 years. Your sister owns the main sports pub, restaurant in town. Your kids go to school. Small town consciousness. There aren't a lot of CILs in Innisfail, Alberta. Today, in a few hours, will be the first time that my father-in-law and mother-in-law will meet Danielle. Transformation is occurring. There's going to be some stretching of beliefs. Now, for many of us, it's easy to sit here and say, well, that shouldn't be any problem. But it's important that we have that empathy to understand what it is to like to have lived 70 years in small towns of less than 10,000 people, all through the central Alberta. And that consciousness that goes with being a cowboy, a farmer. And perhaps never, for sure, even being aware of having a relationship or a friendship with somebody that's gay. So imagine now your son that played hockey. You're going to be on the golf course with him, her. Transformation, baby. But you see, that's what I want you to understand, is that when we're willing to make a shift, when we're willing to change, this thing called life is a moving and fascinating adventure. And I want you to understand, we are always in the process of changing. We can never be rigid in where we're at in our beliefs, in our behaviors, in our thought, in our spiritual process. What was true 40 years ago, 80 years ago, may no longer be true, or it may only have been the surface or the opening to what is more true, what is more powerful. And that's the shift that this planet is going through now. We are in an evolution of consciousness that is shifting and waking us up at the core of our being and saying, if we don't get our poop together, I'm polite today, that our brothers and sisters are struggling and they need our awareness to come about. That we have an earth that needs our tenderness and our care. But if we're focused on ourself and our own needs and our own wants are so great that we can't see beyond them, it will make it hard for us to accept our son who is now our daughter. It will make us hard to accept that 13 million people plus in the Cape of Africa are struggling right now to be fed. Half of Canada, that's equal to almost, are struggling today just to have a few grains of rice. Transformation and uplifting of consciousness is needed. So is there any part of us that perhaps is not allowing us to live to our greatest ascended ability? That maybe we need to empty ourselves back because it is weighting us down and elevating our consciousness to such a viewpoint that we can embrace and see and glorify that which has brought us forth, and that we can hold that glorification for those around us, which creates a sense of acceptance, a sense of generosity, a sense of compassion, a sense of caring. But it's hard to do that out here when we're in here all the time, focused on our needs and wants and behaviors and unhealthy habits. We are shifting and changing in such a radical way that just a few centuries ago would have taken 500 years for the radical shifts in consciousness that are taking place in 6 months on our planet. We have elevated and we are shifting continuously. So we need to be conscious of the transformation that is taking place within us, because what is taking place within us affects that which is taking place around us. Since defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight into who and what we are as human beings. The two most difficult things we will ever do in life is be a parent. Just ask my father-in-law and mother-in-law. And or be in relationship. Two most difficult things. Everything else is easy after that. You master those two or one of those two. Wow. Wow. So we're constantly in this thing called relationships. We might ask ourselves what we mean when we say that we have harmed other people. What kinds of harm do people do to one another anyway? If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind. If we are selfish, we may excite jealousy, misery, and a strong desire to retaliate. Let us think of some of the subtler things which can be quite as damaging. Suppose that in our family lives we happen to be miserly, irresponsible, callous, or cold to our loved ones. Suppose that we are irritable, critical, impatient, and humorless. Suppose we lavish attention upon one member of the family and neglect the others. What happens when we try to dominate the whole family, either by an iron fist or by a constant outpouring of minute directions for just how their lives should be lived from hour to hour? What happens when we wallow in depression, in self-pity, oozing from every pore of our body, and inflict that upon those about us? Such a roster of harms done others, the kind that makes daily living with us difficult and even oftentimes unbearable, could be extended almost indefinitely. So is there a list yet forming in your mind anywhere? So having carefully surveyed this whole area of human relations and having described exactly what personality traits in us injured and disturbed others, we can now commence to ransack memory for the people to whom we have given offense to. We shall want to hold ourselves to the course of admitting the things we have done, meanwhile forgiving the wrongs that have been done to us, real or fancied. We should avoid extreme judgments, both of ourselves and of others involved. We must not exaggerate our defects or theirs. A quiet, objective view will be our steadfast aim. So when we look at making amends, we often think of it's an apology. But actually, an amends is a lot greater. It's more complete. And the best example or the metaphor that I can give you of that, of the difference between making an apology and making amends. Let's say, here's an example of an apology. You borrow somebody's car. You ever lent your car to somebody? And what's the number one thing that causes you to hesitate to lend your car to somebody is that they might get in a wreck. I've had it happen to me. And you're the person that borrows the car and wrecks it. Have you ever done that? And what many people will do, then here's what an apology is. You bring it back to them wrecked and you say, sorry, I'm really sorry I wrecked your car. That's an apology, okay? Here's the difference between an apology and making amends. Making amends is you wreck the car, you take it and get repaired, you get it fixed, and you do everything in your power to restore the car back to as close to its natural or original state. That's what making amends is doing your best to repair a fractured relationship and do your best to return it to its natural state, or what's commonly used, restorative justice, to restore it to its natural and intended state. That's the difference between making amends and an apology. Sorry I wrecked your car is an apology. Oops, I won't let it happen again. To making amends, I'll pay for it. I take full responsibility for it. I'll rent you a car. I'll let you use mine. Whatever I need while your car is getting fixed, I'm going to pay for it all. Don't you worry about a thing. I'm so sorry. And you do everything you can to restore the relationship or the car back to its original state. Are you all clear on the difference? Okay, so that's what I want to. It's putting yourself out there. And that's why courage was our affirmation this morning as we greeted each other. It takes courage to make amends. It takes courage to face somebody that you may have harmed. Or it takes courage for somebody that may have harmed you to face you. That takes courage. So, I want to read this wonderful quote from Dale Turner, author and speaker. And here's what he says. It is the highest form of self-respect to admit our errors and mistakes and make amends for them. To make a mistake is only an error in judgment, but to adhere to it when it is discovery shows infirmity of character. Infirmity of character. So I want you to understand that transformation requires sacrifice. It is not easy. It takes work. It takes effort. And one of the most important things when we're looking at making amends these next 2 weeks or these next 2 months, is that it requires common sense. And here's a satirical article that was printed as an obituary in the London Times. And I think Colleen or Ruth sent this one to me. And here's what it is, an obituary printed in the London Times. Today we mourn the passing of a beloved old friend, Common Sense, who has been with us for many years. No one knows for sure how old he was, since his birth records were long ago lost in bureaucratic red tape. He will be remembered as having cultivated such valuable lessons as knowing when to come in out of the rain, why the early bird gets the worm, life isn't always fair, and maybe it was my fault. Common Sense lived by simple, sound financial policies. Don't spend more than you earn. And reliable strategies. Adults, not children, are in charge. His health began to deteriorate rapidly while well-intentioned but overbearing regulations were set in place. Reports of a 6-year-old boy charged with sexual harassment for kissing a classmate. Teens suspended from school for using mouthwash after lunch. And a teacher fired for reprimanding an unruly student only worsened his condition. Common Sense lost ground when parents attacked teachers for doing the job that they themselves had failed to do in disciplining their unruly children. It declined even further when schools were required to get parental consent to administer sun lotion or an aspirin to a student, but could not inform parents when a student became pregnant and wanted to have an abortion. Common Sense lost the will to live as the churches became businesses and criminals received better treatments than their victims. Common Sense took a beating when you couldn't defend yourself from a burglar in your own home and the burglar could sue you for assault. Common Sense finally gave up the will to live after a woman failed to realize that a steaming cup of coffee was hot. She spilled a little in her lap and was promptly awarded a huge settlement. Common Sense was preceded in death by his parents, truth and trust, by his wife, discretion, by his daughter, responsibility, and by his son, reason. He is survived by his 4 stepbrothers. I know my rights. I want it now. Someone else is to blame, and I'm a victim. Not many attended his funeral because so few realized he was gone. So I want you to understand that in making amends, we must keep common sense in mind, as we'll explore, especially in the month of September, when we look at actually taking that step to make amends to others. We want to make sure that it doesn't cause more harm to the situation. So that's why common sense is really what New Thought teaches. Common sense. There isn't some God lording over us in heaven as an individual keeping track of our rights and wrongs. There is a presence of power in the universe, and it has created spiritual laws to create an orderly universe. We live in an orderly universe. If not, there would be chaos. Planets would be running into each other. Things would be crashing all the time. We live in a very orderly universe. And it created spiritual principles for all of us to be made available to all of us equally. Everyone in this room and on earth can love on the same level that the Dalai Lama or any of the great teachers that have walked before us have loved at. There is no limit to who can experience peace, to who can experience joy. There isn't a closed sect off of here for those that have been blessed and those that aren't. We live in an open, divine universe that has created us all equal. It is our given right to have this divine understanding that we are good and that we deserve good in our lives. But as human beings, we experience challenges along the way, and we want to make sure that we're limiting that and eliminating as quickly as we can those things that are holding us back from receiving as much good and love and joy and happiness as possible. So in making amends, we must do it with a common sense in mind. But I sometimes wonder that if we looked at the big picture for a moment of our world, that if humanity itself doesn't need to make one big amend to humanity for how we as human beings have treated other fellow human beings on this earth. And for one reason or another, it has been weighing on my mind heavily of what is taking place in Cape Horn. And I know there are wars taking place. Obviously, we know the big ones that are happening right now in Afghanistan and Iraq. And we know the other place where there's confrontation. But to me, they're living in this most abundant universe. This most abundant universe. And that we have beautiful brothers and sisters in our world that don't have enough to eat. It saddens me greatly. And I don't know if it's been weighing on anyone else in the room. And if you attended meditation this morning, I shared that if you ever feel helpless about a situation because it's so far away, whenever there's a natural disaster, such as the tsunami in Japan, or some other disaster taking place in somewhere, the one thing you can always do when you have that feeling of help, you sit down and pray. You pray that the care workers, that the caregivers, that the doctors, that the medicine, that the rival governments are working out whatever they need to do, that the UN is being able to come in and bring their good, bring their food, and that it's not being hijacked, that it's not being fought over, and that it's getting to the needs that are to the people that it needs to be. And when we see our brothers and sisters in the world, and take a look at this, just a few pictures, and the stories that are coming out of women that are taking their 6 children the 50 or 100 miles from Somalia into Kenya, and the refugee camp Dadaab is the one that's getting all the publicity right now. It was originally designed to hold 90,000 people, and right now it has over 440,000, and 1,500 are joining it every day. There are 13 million people that are struggling. What is in this person, what is in that little baby, is the same thing that resides in you, in your heart, in your mind, and in your soul. Take a look at this next one. Those are our children. We may not know their names. We may not know who their parents are, but those are our children. And what I know is, to my brothers and sisters on this earth, for the times that I in my own personal life have been so caught up in my own little world that I have neglected the needs of my brothers and sisters, whether that was just through the lack of prayer, or through the unwillingness to be generous in some way that I have neglected you, I am sorry. And as our church, we're going to do something about this. And I don't know what it is. And I'm not sure if this is the place to direct our good, but we are going to do good in this world. My life has been about good, bringing good to inmates, the 3,500 inmates I have served unconditionally, to those that were suffered from the disaster and the bombing in Oklahoma City, to the times on holidays where I served homeless. I want to serve this country, our country, the world in some way. And I don't have the idea right now. It's easy for us to tithe to them, and that can be done. And we can do a lot of things, but I want something hands-on. I don't care if a year from now we make it our goal to go to some country and we build a school for $20,000 and we employ teachers and that can be, I don't know what it is. We build a water holding tank. We're going to do something. We're not going to sit on our asses doing nothing. If a kid can get a bunch of kids from North America shooting baskets and raise money through shooting free throws, and he's built something like between 20 and 30 schools starting at 11 or 12 years old, you're telling me this group of people here can't do one thing in the next year or two? We can, and we're going to. That's our outreach. That's what it means to shift. And the stronger we get inside these walls, the stronger we can be outside these walls. That's why we're here on Sunday, not to look at each other and see how much coffee we can drink. We're here to do that and more and more. So the phone call I want to end with. And I want to ask you who in your life needs a phone call like this, and of the times that perhaps you need the phone call. And it's called the Great Happiness. The telephone rang and I reached to answer it. "Hi, Steve," said the voice on the other end. "I just wanted to see how you're getting along. I had not heard from my old friend for many months. It was good to talk to him. I wondered why he hadn't kept in touch better." Toward the end of the conversation, he said, "If you need me in any way, I'll be happy to help out." And he meant it. That call came at just the right time, as they so often do. I needed those words of encouragement. I hung up the phone feeling a satisfying lump of warmth in my chest, and that day I relearned something important about life. Life is primarily about people, about relationships. It's not about plans, text messages, and tweets and schedules. It's not about to-do lists and a million tasks left undone. Life, it's about people. To love and to know that we are loved is the greatest happiness of existence. And happiness seems to be something that is in short supply for too many of us today. My friend reminded me that it is never just enough to love. We must also express it. What good are our affectionate feelings towards others if we don't find ways to let them know? George William Childs put it like this: "Do not keep the alabaster box of your love and friendship sealed up until your friends are dead. Fill their lives with sweetness. Speak approving, cheering words while their ears can hear them and while their hearts can be made happier and be thrilled. The kind things you mean to say when they are gone, say before they go. Happiness may be just a phone call away." Who is it that needs a phone call in your life? Just to let them know that you're there. Put down that damn text. Put down the email. Pick the phone up. Get in your car. Get on your bicycle. Walk out your front door. Who needs that outreach? Who needs that connection in your life? Do not misbelieve that a text message or an email is the same as a phone call or a personal visit. Transformation. Transformation. Let us pray. Turning within to that divine place that we retreat to consciously when we go to pray. And knowing that in this place of prayer, there is a law that is initiated through the spoken word, through the intention, through the consciousness of setting prayer in motion. We all have it, and at any time, our lives are our living prayers. And I'm right now affirming and knowing that there is a divine goodness permeating through every one of us, not only in this room, but in our community, country, and world. And that energy is joining us all together in the same united consciousness. The consciousness that I am thinking into, speaking into, affirming into, praying into is the same consciousness our brothers and sisters on the screen are thinking and living in. And I'm right now affirming and knowing that if there is anything in our life that needs to be made whole and can be made whole through making amends, that the courage to do so is finding its way to our conscious life, where it then takes action, where it's not our intention, but our intention moves and manifests into action. And I'm right now knowing that there is action taking place throughout our planet to feed all of our brothers and sisters. For in the year 2011, it is no longer acceptable for people to die without enough food. We have more than enough, and I am knowing that the generous spirit that resides so beautifully within all human beings is coming to the forefront. That the old greed, that the old habit of there's not enough, the old belief systems, those are falling away. And we are coming to the conclusion that it is generosity, it is sharing, it is giving to others that will transform our planet. Perhaps that's the lesson that we are here on this planet to learn. That it's about reaching out and giving and serving to those that we walk this planet with. I am knowing and affirming that whoever it is that may need that phone call, that need that visit, that need that friendly smile, that intuitive knowledge seeks you out and you can hear it from within and you act upon it. I am affirming all the good that is about to come to us this week. I'm affirming that any relationships that seem to be clouded become clear. I am affirming where there seems to be less, there is more. I am affirming that where there needs to be less and there is more, that there is now less. That was humor. I give thanks for each one of you and your courage to be here and for what is unfolding in this vision, in this purpose, in our mission as a ministry at the Center for Inspired Living. I am thankful for each and every one of you. I am thankful for our choir. I am thankful for our ushers and greeters and our children's ministry and our servers and our Pearl Durr that serves so unconditionally and all that goes on, our audio and video sound team and all that takes place behind the scene, our accounting, our core council, all that makes our community a thriving community that is growing in the month of August. For this and so much more, man, am I grateful to be alive. Am I grateful to be in this community? And am I grateful to be a Canadian? For this and so much more, will you join me in completing this prayer by saying, as my brothers and sisters, the Native Americans say, Homatakiasan, all my relations. And so it is.